Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Offline World. And today I've got a fairly interesting story for you because I'm taking the new Nissan X-Trail, which is going to go on sale in India in the month of August. But before that, I'm going to be driving this car and I'm heading to a very interesting place. This is the Heritage Transport Museum here in Gurugram. It belongs to a good friend of ours, Tarun Thakral, who's founded this place and built it into a magnificent ode to automotive history that's taken place in India and from generations down, cars that have come down to India, they're all going to be displayed there. But it's not just about cars, it's about mobility at large. So it's going to be a very interesting story. Let's go and check out the Heritage Transport Museum in the new Nissan X-Trail. The X-Trail will be offered as a CBU, which is a completely built-up unit, which means Nissan India will be importing these cars and then selling them in India, and there are just about 150 units up for sale. Now, in its fourth generation, this all-new X-Trail will be offered to India or to Indian consumers with just one choice of engine and transmission without the four-wheel drive powertrain. So what does the new X-Trail offer? Well, the most interesting bit about this is its three-cylinder engine. And yes, a lot of you are going to be exclaiming out, saying a three-cylinder engine in an SUV, the size of the X-Trail. Well, yes, a three-cylinder engine. Don't be discouraged or assume that a three-cylinder engine does not work in a car of the size of the X-Trail. Small compact engines are being used globally in multiple cars, and a three-cylinder engine, well, you'll be surprised to know that this engine makes about 160 PS of peak power and 300 Newton meters of torque. Not just that, ARI fuel efficiency figures put this at about 13.5 kilometers per liter, which may not seem like it's very impressive considering all that has gone into making this engine very efficient. So let me tell you a bit about that. This engine is the world's first engine that has commercially been offered in a product like the X-Trail, which has got variable compression, which means the compression ratio changes depending on the driving conditions, which means if you want more performance, you get more performance. If you want more efficiency, you get more efficiency as well. The three-cylinder engine, of course, it's got dual VVT, it's got a lot more fancy technology, all of which have been added to this configuration to give that good balance of efficiency and performance. So let's talk about the feel. Let's talk about how it is to drive. Well, we just went over a bump and the suspension feels very well sorted out. So it's neither too stiff nor is it too soft. And I think in that respect, it will give you great ride quality. It will feel confident. It will feel firm. It will feel like it knows what it's doing. The steering wheel, well, again, variable assist, so it's light at lower speeds and the weight adds up as you're going faster. But most importantly, what does the engine and transmission combination feel like? 1.5 litre three-cylinder engine and a CVT transmission. Well, they just don't sound, like I said, the best combination in the world. But here's my take on it. If you're driving this car at slow speeds, it certainly feels refined, but step on the gas and you can hear the engine. It certainly doesn't feel refined, it feels a little stressed because that's the three-cylinder. Initial acceleration is brisk. It is a quick, rapidly momentum building engine. So in that regard, anyone who's got a doubt about whether this car can seat those 6 or 7 passengers inside this cabin with luggage and then get out or head out into the mountains, well, those 300 Newton meters of torque will certainly be more than enough to do any of those tasks. But it will feel a little stressed while doing it. Is it quiet? Absolutely. The most sound that you can hear comes not from the engine or the transmission, but it comes from the tires. Now, the SUV that I'm driving has got Michelin Primacy road tires. These are 20-inch profiles, and that's a bit of a concern because 20 inches is a size that isn't readily or easily available anywhere across India. And here's one bit of concern that I have is that Nissan does not offer a spare wheel, either a full size or a space saver on the X-Trail. Why is that? Well, because like I said, this is a mild hybrid and there is a battery pack that sits under the rear seats, and that battery pack takes up the space that would be required to place a spare wheel. So instead what you've got is a puncture sealant kit. Add the liquid whenever you have a puncture and it will seal up the hole, and of course you can fill in air. There is a compressor provided along with this car, so you can refill air into the tire and then of course be on your way. But any serious punctures, if you cut the sidewalls, well, that sealant isn't going to work. So here's the nice bit about the Nissan X-Trail. There are a couple of things that I really admire and appreciate, which most customers also will appreciate. One is of course the space that you get in the rear, in the second row. There are 3 rows of seats like I mentioned, but in the second row these are adjustable, so you can get them forward and back, and of course you can also adjust the backrest if you want to. There you go. And it gives you a lot of options for both passengers to be seated inside as well as a luggage. However, if you take these seats right to the back, there really isn't any space left for the third row passengers, and in those times it's best to be used to put in luggage. Fold the third row down completely flat and then use that space to put in any luggage that you would want. So ideally this is a 5-seater car, but with that third row definitely has its practicality if you've got an extended family or larger family and kids who can sit in the back comfortably. The other part about the X-Trail that I really like are these doors. If you look at it, it opens up to 85 degrees. Well, that's almost at right angles, which means you get a lot of room to get in and out of the X-Trail. I think that's absolutely brilliant what they've done with the design. And we've made it to the Heritage Transport Museum. Lovely Christmas tree made up of traffic signal lights, and of course right there behind me is the building. Well, it is on the outskirts of Gurugram, a little far away from center of Gurugram, but nonetheless, let me assure you that this is definitely a place worth coming to on a weekend. Shall we go in there? This was a tramway that this tram, these bogies, belonged to the Kalkara tramways, and it was acquired or rather brought to this museum in 2017. But it's fascinating. It tells a story about an early mode of transportation that existed in India, the trams, and this ran in multiple places across the country. If you look at it closely, these are tickets for various tram services that run across the country. And if you look at it, one of them is Bombay, the BEST undertaking. Bombay Electrical and Suburban Transport. BEST tickets, BEST tickets, BEST tickets. So there was a time when transportation cost 1 anna. This is 7 naya paisa, 5 naya paisa. Just how old this is, I'm not entirely sure how old this ticket is, but this is several decades old. I'm willing to bet almost about 50, 60 years, if not older. That's when, in fact, probably older also, because that's when the Ana and the Naya Paisa system used to operate for public transport. Nowadays, you don't even count paise. Everything's now down to the rupee. Fascinating. Right behind me are these steam rollers, and this one right here, this was made by Tata's, or rather Telco, which was Tata Electric and Locomotive Company Limited. And this is a steam roller. This didn't run on petrol or diesel. This ran on steam, much like this. This was not made in India, but the orange one there, that is the first indigenous steam roller made by Tata Motors. But sorry, not Tata Motors, but Telco, as it was called back then. And you got this, another steam roller. Of course, much older. This operated in 1914. But these are the basis of building roads in India. Early days of road development happened thanks to steam rollers like this. So here we are. This is the Heritage Transport Museum, which was set up in the year 2013. That's when it began operations, and of course began with financial assistance from the Ministry of Culture, Government of India, and then of course a lot of other patrons who supported and helped build this place and provided the means not just to house these fascinating pieces from mobility history that existed in India, but also helped run this facility today. Here's an interesting display. This showcases the wheel dating back to several hundred years ago, and it shows the evolution of the wheel right down to the modern tires that we now use on our cars, the radials that we use on our cars. All of these are originals, which mean they've been used at some point or the other. If you look at them carefully, well, the principle hasn't changed. They're spoked wheels around which there exists either metal or later on harder rubber compounds before moving down to pneumatic tires that had air enclosed inside them. But if you're, well, looking out to get an education for your kids, to teach them something new, to teach them something about how technology has progressed over several decades, several centuries also for that matter, this is a great example to show them how things worked way back. This section is all before engines existed. This is the pre-mechanized section, which means you've got carts of various sorts. All of these have been restored to their original condition, and well, they all come from the early 20th century. And if you look at them, some of them are absolutely fascinating, and two-wheeler carts, or rather two-wheeled carts, four-wheeled carts, multiple occupants, some for, well, heads of state, some, most of them, as you can see, covered, but they're all used for some mobility purpose or the other. These examples are rural examples which are used, well, way in the 17th, 18th, 19th century, coming up to these more modern looking carts, carriages rather, which were used by the British, the English, and of course the more affluent classes in India. Now, while a lot of the coachwork on some of these was done in India, a lot of the technology or the designs came from Europe, some from Germany, some from England, and other parts of Europe as well. But what is fascinating to see is that there was a certain elegance and charm to bodybuilding even back in the day. After the carts, these carriages, well, gave way to classic cars, which is in another section which we will see right here in the Transport Museum. But you can see some of the early inspirations for coachwork coming in from these carriages. Elegance, charm, a lot of dainty work, very carefully crafted bodywork on a lot of these carriages. Also, you can see a lot of technology still coming in You look at some of these, they've got suspension bits on those. That is a C suspension on the carriage over here, that four-wheel carriages. This also has, if you look at it, different sized wheels, front and rear. And if you look at it, it's also got, well, some of these carriages will have a steering arm, some don't, but these are essentially to harness or put the horses on. This would have had at least 4 of them tied to the yoke. Makes it very fascinating to see what kind of transportation existed way back when cars didn't. So the Heritage Transport Museum has got multiple sections. All of these sections are housed in this 4-story building, starting off from the basement, the ground floor, the first floor and the second floor. And each floor has got a different display. We are right now getting into the basement, and in here you've got the classic cars, classic and vintage cars. Now a lot of these are also cars that were sold and distributed in India. You'd see on one corner, you've got the Tata Estate, you've got the S-Class, you've got the Premier Padmini, DC's Designs, you've got the Badal, the Standard Herald, and so many more. Now, all of these are part of India's automotive heritage, and all of these are on display here at the Heritage Transport Museum. Now, you've also got sections for trains, you've got section for aviation, you've got sections on waterways, you've got sections for art displays and so much more. If you had to come down to the Transportation Museum, then provision for at least a day, because there are so many things to see out here. This is not going to be a short exercise. So a couple of hours spent at the Heritage Transport Museum has been absolutely fascinating. But I can't say the same about the Nissan X-Trail. A couple of hours spent driving it around Gurugram, well, not as fascinating. It is capable, however. It is luxurious, it is spacious. It's not a bad drive altogether. But a lot of it will depend on where Nissan India manages to price the X-Trail. Too expensive, and I think they will lose the plot. Priced right, and maybe, just maybe, they will sell off those 150 units that are lying at their Chennai facility.